know, we had to talk about this more. Come with me. I want to go to the table, Elizabeth. Come on, because I want to pick the brains of our wonderful panel of legal experts, of lawyers, because I need to unpack even more. We've got here today Joey Jackson, we've got Mimi Roca, and we've got Jeremy Saland. All right, we got a law firm. Let's go. We got to talk about this. Mimi, let me begin with you. I mean, we heard about car bombings. We heard about the violence. We heard about the years of abuse that was alleged towards Cassie. How does this fit in to the specific claims that they have to prove, including sex trafficking?
So it's the elements of force, fraud, and coercion. That's an essential part of what the government needs to prove in terms of sex trafficking. And then will also relate to the RICO, because remember, the racketeering conspiracy, it encompasses everything, including the sex trafficking. And so what you're hearing, or what we've heard so far from Cassie, and through exhibits, the videos, photographs, and other testimony I'm sure we will hear about, is not only that he used violence on her, which, as I'm sure we'll discuss, they're saying, well, that's domestic violence.
Right. He concedes that point in the opening statement.
But not only is it violence against her, but it's not just in that moment that the violence has an effect. It has a lasting impact on her will, her ability, her her free will, essentially. It cabins her. It keeps her from feeling like she can act for herself and escape.
I'm glad you mentioned feeling, because it's going to come down really for the jurors to think about this. And I wonder always what a juror is thinking. Is the prosecutor and me right? I know it's a fool's errand to predict, and yet the jury has to buy those things that Mimi has said. They have to receive that in the same way. Our feelings of potential violence and feelings that they're being blackmailed, is that enough?
So I think Mimi lays it out like the exceptional prosecutor that she was, right? But the reality is...
Once a prosecutor, always a prosecutor. There you go, Mimi.
As we can see. But the reality, I think from the defense perspective, is far different. I think that we have to really
compartmentalize.
Thank you. We have to do that as it relates to the fraud, the coercion, right, et cetera. And why do I say that? It's not just about the acts of violence themselves. It's just not about that. It's about how they related to you engaging in the activity. Now, the defense has its opportunity to highlight the significance here. And what that means is that you have to match the fact to the elements of the crime. Let's talk about the sex trafficking. When we talk about the coercion, did the coercion relate to you engaging in the actual activity, or were you guys just in a really tumultuous relationship? Can you tie that to you actually performing sexual intercourse, or was it the fact that you were on board with it? It was a natural part of your relationship. It was the essence of what you did. It's not about what he expected. It's not about I was making him happy. Did you say no? Did he otherwise use drugs or guns, if any of that, to compel you to do that? And so that needs to be tied to that. It just can't be, well, I thought he might hit me because I didn't engage in. I didn't hear that. I heard a lot about all of these, things, but
well,
not about
wait. How about the repeated threats released in the video? That was that cloud of fear, almost this sword hanging over her head all the time.
I mean, that blackmail material, that coercion is incredibly powerful evidence. And they're seeing the stills from some of these videos that could have been used to really manipulate and hurt her.
By the way, once he threatened to release it on Christmas Day as she was going home to her mother's home in Connecticut. That was one of the threats.
Yeah, and they're very real threats. But I think to Joey's point, and I'm going to concede and say, Joey, you pulled me over to the defense side better. Good job, Joey. Is that to a certain extent, I think they can overplay their hand in terms of the violence against her. There was a reference to that Ike Turner, pardon me, I'm having problems now, Ike Turner and Tina Turner. And that was not certainly a sexual coercion, trafficking type of a situation. It was an ugly, violent, disgusting man who did horrible things to a woman. And if that's the case, which they're conceding that he may be, that does not mean that he's involved in a conspiracy with this criminal enterprise that the goal was to traffic people across state lines, among other things, to commit this fraud, to commit these offenses.
As you describe it and thinking about, we're talking about this balance, right? Because the prosecution is trying to find that balance between what will be persuasive and then what is overkill. And on the other side, the defense is going to try to figure out what what are the avenues and doors they can get into to plant those seeds of reasonable doubt. I mean, when you looked at this and heard the testimony, and of course those graphic images, as we saw in court today, were shown to the jury alone, not the press, not the public, is there a risk that it gets to be too much for the jurors and you're overplaying your hand?
This is where I get to rebut.
You get to be Mimi Roca.
So, in fairness, yes, there's always that risk of going too far. And I think, though, that they're showing those images to the jury. The reaction that apparently the jury had of is being kind of overwhelmed by the images, I think is actually why they need to show them to the jury. Because what they're saying is that this ongoing, the threat of releasing the videos, the constant threat and actual violence that occurred, and the fear of it, the knowing he had gotten to all of that and more, is what compels her, what makes her feel like she needs to keep doing what he wants her to do. And that includes these sex parties, or whatever we're going to call them, that are so disgusting that a jury can't even look at it. Why would any sane person, and she comes off as a sane, rational person, apparently, in her testimony.
She does.
Why would she do that voluntarily?
Did she
Wait, but hold on. I want you to add, because you mentioned the jurors, Elizabeth. Those jurors did react. I mean, when they saw the images that everyone had been talking about, what these freak-offs were, they actually saw the screenshots of the video footage.
They did, and something that we have talked about is all of these allegations are disturbing, to say the least. They are horrific allegations. I've covered everything from the Harvey Weinstein trials to Danny Masterson. Those had nothing on this. These allegations are really hard to hear. Laura and I have been looking at each other and saying, the jury's not reacting. I mean, they really haven't been, but they did today when they saw those still images of the freak-off. So
one woman almost touched her chest for a second and then almost gasped. A man looked and looked away. I mean, that was something.
Yeah, so they definitely reacted to that. And I agree with you that that is having an impact on them. And you could only imagine that's exactly what the prosecutors want to happen, to say, this isn't normal. This is not just a relationship where they're maybe choosing to do these things together. This seems very atypical. And I agree with you, Laura, that the conversation about threats today was something new and very compelling.
But you know what was there? I want you guys to talk about this briefly. She talked a lot about her feelings and love. I mean, she sent loving text messages to him. A Father's Day text message that she sent as well. I mean, here's what she said in a Father's Day text message back in 2018. Thank you for always showing me love and happiness the way it's supposed to be. Can't wait until we have a baby of our own to celebrate Father's Day. I love you with all my heart. Happy Father's Day again. She's rubbing her belly while she says it in the court today. How do you balance that if you're defense counsel or prosecution and try to convince the jury that she indeed was engaged in an abusive sex trafficking relationship?
Look, there's no question about the fact that this was a very degrading and complicated relationship. There's no question that he engaged in some despicable behavior. That needs to be conceded off the bat. The issue is that it was a relationship of long standing. And can we now have a jury infer that she didn't want to participate? Did she ever explicitly indicate, I'm not on board?
Mimi, you don't like that part.
Well, because I don't think you have to say those words out loud.
But then it's not a matter of saying them out loud. It's a matter of engaging in a course of conduct to the person, Sean Combs, where you indicate explicitly that you're not with it.
What do you think
would have happened if she had said that?
I don't know. But in year 2, hold on, this is a 10-year relationship. In year 2, he comes to her and says, look, this is how I want to live our life, right? And she lives the life with him. In year 3, year 4, 5, 6, 7, all the way to 10. And so what I'm saying is at any point, right, beyond testimony of, well, I loved him, beyond testimony of, well, I thought he'd be upset with me, beyond testimony if this is what he wanted, like, you need to make yourself clear in some specific way. You just can't, as a prosecutor, rely upon the fact that he would have hurt me otherwise. I just don't think that's
enough. To Joey's point, she came back. She left and came back. She had an opportunity to have a music life and career. She flew on planes. She went to Ibiza. She went to Miami. She flew around the world. She got some benefits, and she was a young woman. The image of a pregnant Cassie who the prosecution wanted to walk up in front of that jury as opposed to the defense wanted her sitting there in advance so that the jury didn't see her go up. There's a different person. It's that they're prosecuting, or pardon me, cross-examining the 19-year-old, 20-year-old, 21-year-old Cassie who had different views than the current woman you see there today.
Well,
I think
hold
it's
on.
difficult.
Everyone, stand by, because we have a lot more to unpack. This, I can't give this short shrift. I may have to fast forward to 2025 when Why Did She Stay is not the tip of the moment for all of them. We'll talk more about it. Much more to get to tonight. The criminal